Welcome to We Are Old, Get Over It, the podcast for active senior living and getting the most out of life. I'm your host, Ken Gluckman. During our summer break, we share highlights of some of our favorite conversations from the past year. These are just short clips from the full-length episodes. You can find the link to the original episodes in the show notes here, or just search the episode title on our YouTube channel or in your preferred podcast app. Help us share this useful and informative information by inviting your family and friends to visit our podcast. Share a clip or an episode with them, and it will give you something to talk about. And now, let's laugh and learn for the week. One thing I want to bring up right now is, why are more and more seniors traveling, and why are more and more seniors taking tours? And you kind of touched on that. Being the fact that things are taken care of for you. Give us an example of what it takes on one of your trips, let's say overseas, maybe to Europe or to the Far East. How it gets started with them meeting you on the phone or your organization, and then the entire process of getting on the tour and then the actual experience of the tour. So could you help me with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So many of our customers find us through our website. We're kind of old-fashioned in this way. We still mail paper catalogs, which people like. And if anyone's interested, you can head on over to our website at www.getours.com, and you can order one of those catalogs to be sent to you. But people find us in a variety of ways. We're also a preferred provider to AARP. And a lot of our customers come to us through there. Of course, AARP is an advocacy organization for the needs of older Americans, and we've been with them actually for about 15 years. And they give us a pretty rigorous test every couple of years to make sure we're still serving their customers to the best of their standards. And we've passed with flying colors every couple of years. We're very proud to say. But anyway, to answer your question, people find us. Usually they call us. We have 10 fantastic experts in our office in Portland, Oregon, who have between them something like 120 years of travel industry experience. And we help you find a trip. And there's hundreds of trips to, almost every continent, many, many countries around the world. And the trips range anywhere from a week up to almost a month. And we help you figure out what your goals are. We help you figure out where you want to go, what you want to do, what kind of pace you want to go at. And we just have these kind of good conversations. I think that's one of the things we pride ourselves on is we're real people. We want to talk to you. We want to find out what it is you want to get out of your vacation. And then we kind of go from there, and we can recommend some of our favorite trips for you. So for example, for someone maybe who's never been to Europe and wants to go for the first time and can't really decide on a particular place, we have an incredible trip that's actually, I was just looking at the stats, it's our best-selling trip this year. So there must be a lot of first-time travelers. As you said, more and more people are traveling, right? And so this trip is called the European Whirl. And just off the top of my head, it goes to London, Amsterdam, comes down through Germany, spends some time in Switzerland, spends time a whole week in Italy, goes to France. And as I'm saying this, you can imagine, think about actually planning this out yourself. Finding hotels that are good quality, figuring out how to get from place to place, wondering about money, wondering about the language. I mean, once you start pulling that thread and unraveling all the pieces that go into it, it becomes very stressful to think about, which is certainly not what people want out of a vacation. So we book your flights if you want. You can book your own flights if you want. It's up to you. But we book your flights. You fly over there. Someone generally will be there to pick you up at the airport, which, that's a big factor. People are tired. I can't sleep on a plane, so I'm not exactly in my best shape when I get somewhere overseas. And someone's there to pick you up, take you to that first hotel, and then you meet your travel director. And I'm going to talk about that a lot today. Your travel director is your friend in a foreign country. So you're going somewhere where maybe you don't speak the language, you don't know how things work, and they are experts in that area. They do speak the language. They often live in those areas or are from those areas, and they're going to be with you from beginning to end. They are your guide. They take care of things. And, travel, there's so many different pieces to it, and so many things can change.
And
And
so many things can go wrong.
so many things can go wrong. And people go, well, how can you guarantee that nothing will go wrong? Well, that's sort of a silly question. Nothing, no one can guarantee that nothing will go wrong, but what we can guarantee is that you have an expert on your side. So Italy is pretty much the number one destination in Europe for Americans. I think it might be tied with France, but it's something around there. So Italy is a good example. If we're talking about price, one of our most popular itineraries to Italy, it's called Great Italian Cities, and it's 9 nights. It's a great trip for first timers to Italy, and it's a nice slow paced trip too. Um, that trip is 25% less expensive in March than it is in September. So pretty significant savings out of the gate just on the tour itself. Add on to that, your airfare is also going to be less expensive. So now, March is a great time to go to Italy. Is March a great time to go to Norway? Maybe not. So that's why it kind of is a different answer depending on the destination. But if you're talking the very popular countries of Southern Europe that have relatively mild winters, I always very strongly recommend that guests who have the ability, if they, are retired and can kind of go anytime, I always recommend going in, close to the off season. So we would be saying somewhere from April to September would be peak season, and outside of that would be either the low season or shoulder season. And I was looking at some stats about this, and I think this is kind of illustrative. So Italy had 10 million international visitors in July in 2024. In February, they had 3 million. So that's a huge difference. And there's in the news, everyone's probably seeing this. There's over tourism, and there's protests in these major cities saying we're full. We can't take any more tourists. That's limited to certain times of the year,
And
right?
certain locations also.
And certain locations. And there's plenty of room for everybody who wants to go, just not if everyone wants to go during the same 8-week period in the summer, right? Um, France, as another example, in July of 2024. Now, France, they had the Olympics last year, so it's a little bit of an oddball one. But France last year in July had 25 million international visitors, and in February of the same year, they only had 8 million. So it's not even half as many. It's like a third or a quarter as many in those time frames. So not only are you going to have lower prices, but you're going to have far, far fewer crowds. And in many cases, in places like Italy, like France, and certainly Spain, you're going to have temperate weather. You're going to have nice weather. Now, maybe it'll rain a little bit. You might need to bring a jacket. But for me, and maybe not everyone agrees, but for me, I will take the trade off of weather that may not be quite as good for the lower prices and the lower crowds.
Well, also, what I'm finding is on my travels and speaking to people, because of the climate conditions, I just came back from Greece and it
Right,
was 99 degrees in
right.
Athens. So you have to take a siesta during the middle part of the day. And
Mm-hmm.
they had closed the Acropolis because people were fainting waiting in line to get into it. And I think that that's another advantage to going slightly off season
Well,
because the weather's
yeah, and
cooler and there aren't as many people.
certainly, and older folks are the most affected by heat. I mean, it's just
Absolutely.
it becomes unsafe at some point. The heat and the crowds. And again, I'm not here to tell anyone don't ever go anywhere in the summer. If that's the time that you can go, then going on a trip with a guide who we have all your sightseeing ahead of time, you're not stuck waiting in line at the Acropolis in 100-degree heat, right? So
Exactly.
there's no better way to do it if you are going to go in the summer than go with a guided trip like the kind that we offer.
Okay.
But yeah, heat everywhere's getting hotter. Europe's no exception. I mean, and air conditioning standards are behind. And look, I live in Portland, Oregon, and many people here just have never had air conditioning, and it's like a big industry here. People retrofitting their homes with air conditioning for the first time because it's just suddenly the summers are longer and hotter than they've ever been, and Europe's the same way. And sometimes, especially in Northern Europe, hotels don't even have air conditioning because they've never needed them.
Right.
So it might take a few years for these things to catch up. And in the meantime, if you're there in July and there's a heat wave, it might be pretty uncomfortable. And you can definitely avoid that by traveling in the off season. I mean, I just love Italy in the off season. People ask me all the time, what's the best time to go to Italy? And I say January. And I believe that wholeheartedly. I've been to Italy in January multiple times, and I've been to Venice and felt like I was the only one there. And then you see pictures of Venice in the summertime, and it's wall to wall people, right? So there's
I
plenty of
understand.
room for everybody. Plenty
Okay.
of room.
What are some of the common misconceptions about senior travel?
But that's a great question, and I think a common misconception would be that these are very, how would I put it? These might be superficial trips. That these trips are just skimming the surface. Hey, look, there's the Eiffel Tower. Hey, look, there's the Trevi Fountain. And of course, those things are amazing and people want to see them. But really, in the last 10, 15 years, and I think our company has kind of led the way in this, they're doing much more cultural enrichment on these trips than perhaps in the past. So, for example, on a trip that goes to Italy, I was just looking at this yesterday. There's one of our trips that does Italy. And of course, you're in Rome. And of course, you're going to see the Colosseum and you're going to see the Vatican and all of those things. And if you've never been to Italy, of course, those are at the top of your list that you're going to want to see. But when people are done with the trip, oftentimes the thing they talk the most about isn't the big things. They talk about the little things that they weren't expecting. So, for example, on this particular trip to Italy that we run, on the way from Rome down to Sorrento, where you stay a couple of nights down there, which is lovely, you stop off on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius. So right, looming above Naples and Pompeii. And you stop at a tomato farm. Now, some of your listeners may have been to this region, and if you have, I'm sure you remember the tomatoes. The tomatoes they grow in the volcanic soil on the slopes of Vesuvius are unbelievably delicious. They are, dare I say, explosive with flavor, to use a terrible joke. But we go to a tomato farm there. We meet the family that owns the tomato farm. You can walk through and pick tomatoes right from the vines and taste them. We have lunch there. And that's the kind of extra thing that you're going to get going on a trip that we do, is we find these local authentic experiences that if you were just going on your own might be hard to find, or you might, maybe you can go knock on the door of a farm and say, hey, can I taste your tomatoes? But maybe that might not work out for you. So I think that's one of the misconceptions, is that a tour is just sort of being led around by someone holding a flag, and it's going to kind of be bland or not exciting. And I think that's what people find they've enjoyed the most, is these smaller moments on the trip that aren't necessarily something that you booked the trip because of, but it's what keeps you coming back.